Nobody spoke English, so you couldn't find out what was going on. But there was a little railroad station there, wasn't open up yet. It was too early in the morning, but there was a schedule on the wall out there. And it sounded like another train would be coming through in about an hour and a half or 2 hours, headed in the direction we needed to go. But we no longer had any more money. We were completely broke by then. So we waited, and here come the train a couple hours later, and people were getting on it. So we got on it too, on the very last car of the train. And when we seen the conductor coming checking tickets, we picked up our suitcase, and we'd go stand out on the very end of the train on the little platform, hoping that he didn't come out there to take a look around or to have a cigarette or something to smoke. And he did. He would come down the line, and nobody turned us in. I mean, them other German people saw us pick up our bags and go out to the back of the train, and they could have said, there's 2 Americans out there, but they didn't do that. And so we stayed out there until he turned around, and we were hoping he was going to go back, and he did. Because if he'd have stuck around in the last train car that we were on, we'd have had to ride in the back of that train all the way. But he went out toward the front of the train. All of the cars were connected together, so you just walked from one car to the other, and he disappeared. So then we come back in, and we sat down in a couple seats near the end of the train and stuff. And then the train never stopped until we got off. We were only about 40 miles away from our base in a bigger town, and I can't think of the name of it. But the train stopped there, and everybody got out. Late December. It was Christmas had gone by, but New Year's hadn't come yet. It was between the holidays, and we could see in the fog. We could see the Statue of Liberty. Through the fog and stuff like that. So then we knew we were back in America. Everybody cheered and cried. Yeah. Yeah, I remember. Everybody crying. So then they had loaded us onto a troop train right there in the Brooklyn Naval Station. And we got on this troop train, and I was in charge of all the records. They picked different people out of the outfit, and they happened to pick me. So I had all of these big old wooden boxes full of all of the records of all of the guys that came back on the ship. And we got on the train late that afternoon, and we had a meal on the train. I remember that. And then the train took off for Chicago, Illinois, troop train. We got into a nice little compartment with 2 men to each compartment. We had our own bathroom and sink, and had our own bunks, and all them other guys had to sleep in the seats. All the way to Fort Sheridan, Illinois. It was right out of Chicago. So we got in there right over the New Year's holiday, and the base was shut down because of the holiday, but they trucked us and they bused us from the train depot over to Fort Sheridan, Illinois. Anything else, if you got hurt in the service, all them records were checked. And that took 3 or 4 days to do that. A couple of days at least anyway. And then after that, we were all given our discharge papers, and you were a free man. But you could get called back to duty if a war broke out someplace. For the next 3 years, you could have got called back if worse come to worse. But anyhow, you were given your discharge papers and stuff. So several of us hired a big, long taxi cab. They call them limos today, but this wasn't that big. And they tied our duffel bags up on top of it, and we took that cab down to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we got on it was either the Hiawatha Chief or some Indian name. The name of the train was, and that took us back. Then we were in a beautiful dining car where you went back up into a dome ceiling and you could look out on the countryside. And it was still Christmas time yet. And as you went through all these towns through Wisconsin into Minnesota, they had all the Christmas lights were all shining on the buildings and the trees and the houses and everything. That was really pretty. So then we got into Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I stayed overnight with these couple Army buddies that I knew in the service. When I first went in, we didn't know each other. It was in Germany. We were in different places. But I stayed overnight with them, and then the next morning they hauled me out to the airport in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I flew into Rapid City on a cold, wintry day. I got discharged on the 6th of January, so I was home in Rapid City on about the 7th. And then I didn't tell my folks when I was coming back home because I didn't know when I was coming home. But here, as I was walking out off the airplane, that was back in the days where you walked into the terminal. You didn't get one of these fancy rides like today. And there was my dad and mom standing by the window.